Lake Lewis, kind enough to join us, does a great job covering the Skins, the NFL, USA Today. Great follow on Twitter at Lake Lewis as well. And I'm sure somehow he's gonna throw in a little Penn State little take today. But nonetheless, he joins us on the Boardwalk Hunt Hotline. What's going on, bud?
Hey, what's going on, Q? How you doing?
I'm doing well. Listen, I was thinking about this too, by the way. Did you ever have a situation where an athlete flat out said to you, hey, I want to punch Lake Lewis in the face, like last night with Charles Barkley and Draymond Green?
No. Thank God. That's not the case.
It's the complete opposite.
Yeah, I mean, and if that were to be the case and someone tried, I'd get a lot of money. So.
Well, I don't think I've had people that wanted to punch me in the face, but I've had, me, I've had the face to face with a lot of these guys. But hey, you know what? At the end of the day,
I've had a run-in with a guy or two in the locker room, in his locker room.
But listen, if you tell them no, if you have an opinion and you explain why, and you don't hide behind it, there's more respect there, and then there's a good relationship.
Yeah, I think I won't mention names, but I think that one of the guys I had a run-in with wanted me to. He basically tried to punk me, and I had to let him know, yeah, you play football, but that's where that ends. So let's not have an altercation in here.
No, that wouldn't be good. I'll tell you this real quick, and then we'll get to the NBA and the NFL. I had one issue once with, remember Keith Hamilton? Patterson kid, played with the Giants. He was a very good football player. I was somewhat critical of their defense that day, and he basically turned around to me and said, what blank game were you watching? I said, the game where your defense just gave up 45 points. So, and I'll leave it at that. All right, let's start with the NFL. Here, interesting little insight for you. So with the Skins drafting Derrius Guice, now I had a reporter on the other day that we didn't want to speculate and/or assume, because I thought the Eagles were potentially going to take a tight end, which they did, or draft a running back, and Guice was one of the players that I mentioned. He came on and said in so many words that there definitely was some type of, I don't want to say altercation, maybe misunderstanding with the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't know if that's one of the reasons they decided not to draft him. If anything, it plays in the Skins' favor, but I'm curious, was that something that has been addressed by Washington? Did Doug Williams address that at all, or more or less talk about the kid's character and there shouldn't be a problem going forward?
He did, and actually I have insight on both those things. Having spoken to some people in Philadelphia, and literally in the building, there was no altercation.
Okay.
What I was told was that there was speculation as far as an altercation, as far as his ride to the airport with the driver. But the driver has come since and said nothing happened.
So much to do about nothing. Okay.
Much to do about nothing. As far as Doug Williams, yes, Doug Williams specifically said that, he knows Derrius Guice. He said they're from the same place in New Orleans called the Bottom. They're from the same area. And, after talking with him, I walked away thinking that Doug Williams is going to take a huge role in watching over Derrius Guice, and I think the other thing people have to understand too is the dynamic of this team now. They have a real, and this isn't to knock Kirk Cousins in any way. I don't want anyone to look into this, but it is a fact that Kirk did not have that locker room. Alex Smith already does, and they haven't even put pads on yet.
That's
interesting. He's a veteran leader, and that's the first thing. A good friend of mine used to, he just recently got promoted to Yahoo as their senior NFL guy, Therese Paylor, but he covered Kansas City for a while, and he told me at the Combine, the first thing you're going to notice about Alex is his leadership qualities. He said he's a man's man. That's exactly what he said. And he said, guys just gravitate to him. And it's just kind of a telltale sign there, Q, because when Alex Smith came here, and I know I'm kind of straying here, but the point about Alex Smith is when he left Kansas City, you saw all the players and even coaches talk about how great of a person he is, and that he's a leader. They just had to make a youth movement, a quarterback there. That's all that was. Save some money too. But here, I didn't see those outgoing, things about Kirk, and that tells you a little something. So I think that the whole situation with Guice now played into the favor of the Redskins because they feel like they have a veteran quarterback who demands that kind of respect in the locker room. That can also be another guy that can help him in his transition to becoming a professional. So, listen, they needed a running back in the worst way, and this guy fell and fell. After a while, you got to get him, and that's
Sure.
what they did.
Fair enough. Mayfield goes 1, Barkley 2, Darnold 3, Ward 4, Chubb 5. Obviously, once Mayfield goes 1, it was a foregone conclusion. The Giants are going to select Barkley. I mean, they needed that running back. But were you as surprised as many, even though a lot of people don't realize that Mayfield was highly rated, especially by Cleveland, that he went number 1 overall as opposed to Sam Darnold?
I was, and this isn't to knock Mayfield, Baker Mayfield. He's a really good quarterback. I haven't been enamored, frankly, with. I like Darnold out of all of the bunch, and for me, I like Lamar Jackson actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't been enamored with this quarterback class. Obviously the NFL has to do this every year. There's going to be 4 quarterbacks they're going to push. That's just what they do.
Right.
Quarterback league. But for me, if I were Cleveland, obviously I'm not a GM. I just cover these guys, but I would have taken Barkley 1 and probably taken Chubb 4, defensive lineman. But Cleveland felt like they had other needs, and they felt like Mayfield could be a guy that can challenge. But
why? Let me ask you,
why were safe with Tyrod?
Why? Okay, so because you have confidence in their existing quarterback.
I do. I think Tyrod just proved he took Buffalo to the playoffs first time since the 1990s. And my thing is that he's a guy that has proven if he has talent around him, he can. I'm not saying he's going to come in and lead the NFL in passing and all that stuff, but he's a really good quarterback, meaning that he's a professional. He's a serviceable pro that can make some things happen from time to time. And I looked at what they've done around him. This isn't the same Cleveland team, talent-wise, on offense. I mean, they've got Landry, they've got Gordon, they've got Carlos Hyde, they've got a nice tight end already, they've got the kid Coleman. So, I mean, they've had pieces in place. I just thought that, my way of thinking is you shore up your trenches when you're a bad football team, or you get someone that can make your trenches not look as bad, which to me is Barkley for a running game. And on the other side, you could have had Chubb on the opposite side of Myles Garrett. I thought that could have been pretty freaky right there.
Well, no, definitely. See, I know what you're saying regarding 4, in regards to the 4th pick with Chubb, but I made the point the other day where you look at the type of defense that Greg Williams runs, you look at some of these wide receivers in the AFC North, there was a need for a shutdown corner.
I agree with that. I do.
Right?
I do.
So, and then obviously the Giants go Barkley at 2, which tells you that they have a lot more confidence with, I should say, getting at least squeezing out 2 to 3 more years with Eli. I mean, if anything, if they can keep him upright, let's be honest. Gettleman's more in love with this kid, not for how he can run, but the fact that he can block and catch the ball. And you're a Penn State guy, so you know how talented this kid is.
Super talented, and I got to tell you, as much as I'm dismayed that I'm going to have to see him twice a year, I'm actually looking forward to seeing him twice a year. The other thing too is that with the Giants, I mean, the kid Hernandez, and you saw my tweets. I was really big on that kid, and I like what I saw in Indy with him. He's a mauler, and I don't care about him playing at UTEP. I hate when people throw that stuff out there. At the Senior Bowl, this guy was dominating people, and the Giants got themselves a future Pro Bowl guard to lead the way for Barkley. But clearly, that pick was made for Eli.
No doubt,
Barkley.
No doubt.
That was made to keep Eli from hitting his back. So, I mean, Nate Solder, you guys can have him up there. I mean, I think that they've done some things to address some of the holes on their offensive line. And they should be a better football team.
I'm curious, before we go to the NBA, was there anyone that you saw at the Combine that went a little higher than you anticipated?
Probably Mayfield.
Okay, yeah, well.
I mean, to me, I didn't think he was the number 1 quarterback. I didn't. I'm not saying he can't progress and be that good and warrant the pick, but I didn't see. I thought Darnold was the number 1 quarterback by far. Just based on what he currently can do and based on what his upside is, but to each his own. Team. Maybe Cleveland feels like they have a system that's more geared for Mayfield because it's going to be the same system that Tyrod's trying to run. So, that's their call. But outside of that, I was surprised that Sony Michel. I wasn't surprised he was the number one running back because that was my top running back.
Gotcha.
I was surprised that he did go in the first because I wasn't sure if any of these backs would go in the first outside of Barkley. But for New England, of all teams, to take him justifies why he went in the first round. That's the perfect pick for them.
What are they saying about your Wizards down there? Just another season where I'm curious, how much of the blame are they placing at Wall?
I don't think people are placing the blame, but it's ironic you said that because last night I was at an event and someone came up to me and said they've got to get rid of Wall. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, he's the problem with them. And they were playing great basketball when he was injured. And I said, they were 9-14 without John Wall. What great basketball are you talking about? John Wall's their best player by far. Bradley Beal's an all-star, but John Wall's an absolute dog on the court. And I mean a good
dog, yeah.
They don't have a number two dog on their team. Bradley Beal's not a dog. I'm sorry. He's just not. To me, he's a very good player, but he's a complimentary good player. I don't think you can blame him. I would probably have to question some of Scotty Brooks' rotations and some of the things they were doing down the stretch, but I don't think this team can be broken up because of the way the contracts are. I don't even know if they can upgrade at any position on the court right now because of the way these contracts are structured.
I'm watching that game last night between Cleveland and Toronto, and I said during the opening monologue, it feels like the series is already over, and at least Toronto is down 0-3, 0-2 instead of 0-1, because you had a tired, exhausted team in Cleveland. They have your number. You're at home. The crowd's into it. You just get off somewhat of a tough 6-game series against the Wizards, but yet Cleveland had a scratch and claw. They're not the same team. It's really still one man until others step up. And to miss 15 out of 19 down the stretch, to not make one stop, to not convert one bunny, that's a choke job of all choke jobs. And it's par from the course with Toronto. Just when I want to believe in them, I just watched that game last night. Now, is the series over? No, but it makes me harder to believe in them.
Yeah, it does. I agree with you. I thought after the first half, I texted a friend of mine, Cleveland can't play with these guys. They're too athletic and they're too deep, And then I started to see the Toronto team that I used to seeing collapse against the Wizards all those years. They couldn't hit a shot in the second half. They looked disoriented. And last night was probably the worst I've seen DeMar DeRozan look in the playoffs. He had 15 in the first, I know, but in the second half, I just didn't see him attacking and putting pressure on Cleveland's defense. Cleveland was allowed to come back in this game because of Toronto just not playing basketball anymore. It's almost like they played not to lose as opposed to keep their foot on the pedal. And this is a costly win. If Toronto somehow, I know people are like, oh, they'll win game 2. Based on what?
Well, here's the thing. If they don't, it's almost you almost get the sense that Cleveland broke their back and broke their will, and they can probably finish them in 4 or 5 if they win, or if Toronto loses game 2. How about the Boston? Go ahead.
I'm just going to say if Toronto loses game 2, it'll be 4-1 Cleveland. Clearly, Toronto's not a good road team. Bottom line.
What do you make of Boston's win the other night against the Sixers? Right, the Sixers they learned a little bit. They grew up against Miami, but then Boston basically they don't have Kyrie, they don't have Hayward. They lose a couple other players.
Them.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought they out hustled. There was more energy, and they just wanted the game more. And I thought it was a humbling loss for the Sixers.
I think the Sixers needed that kind of loss, and they needed it early because it was a wake-up call. It was that you haven't arrived at the level you think you've arrived. You've arrived as a playoff team, but making the playoffs in the East isn't that difficult.
No.
So now it's what are you going to do? You did beat a Miami team that was outmatched. I mean, clearly Miami didn't have the firepower to hang with Philly, and for the most part, Boston really doesn't. But Boston has a sound scheme, a great young coach in Stevens, And now you're seeing some of these other players that people kind of forgot were there. I mean, Rozier's playing himself into a max contract somewhere.
Horford still got it. Versatile player playing well.
Yeah. I mean, and you have the young kid Tatum. You're saying why he was one of the top picks. If anything, I just think that this is setting up future showdowns between these two teams when both teams are healthy, because Fultz wasn't healthy this year at all either. So when both teams are retooled, and this is going to be a thing that's going to last for years to come in the East. But I think in this series now, it was a huge win for Boston, and Philadelphia almost has to win game 2, or they may be in trouble as well.
No, I agree with that assessment. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And they typically they've got the moxie and the resolve to bounce back, no doubt. Lastly, before I let you get out of here, you saw last night right away, Curry doesn't need to be out there for 45 minutes. Just the fact that he suits up and he's knocking down these shots, it's almost like you're resigned to the fact to just say, okay, here we go. Here comes Golden State. Right? It's just, to me, they're waltzing into the finals. I honestly, I don't think if Houston gets past Utah, I quite frankly don't see how they match up against Golden State.
They don't, and they won't. And I've been telling people all year, Golden State's going to run through Houston. I have them in 6 against Houston. And listen, with Steph Curry, what he does, just being on the floor, now they have spacing, so everyone can get free shots. Look at all the shots Durant was missing early in the game. They were wide open shots. He was almost surprised. Damn, I don't have anybody on me to guard me. So what happens is, too, when Curry starts knocking down those deep threes, those are deflating. Those are almost a spectacular dunk for a team or something like that. Those threes are that deflating, and you could see it. In New Orleans, they were playing pretty well early in the game. I mean, they were hitting shots, and they had a nice lead. As soon as Curry came in and started hitting those shots, it was an avalanche that they couldn't get out the way of. And as much as I like what they're doing there with Alvin Gentry, what he's doing with that team, there's no way they can beat Golden State. They're lucky if they get one off them. They may get one back home in New Orleans. I highly doubt it. Think you might be looking at a sweep here, and I clearly think you're looking at a sweep now with Rubio being out with Utah as far as Houston. So it's time to get the 2 best teams in the league, get this thing on the road, and let's go.
Listen, the NBA would love nothing more than to see one more showdown, Cleveland and LeBron and Curry and Golden State. And again, that might be a major mismatch come finals time, but you got the X factor in LeBron with Cleveland. First things first, I got to get past Toronto.
Well, I mean, whoever comes out the East is getting the broom is coming out. I really feel that. I actually think Philadelphia might be the best team to come out the East as far as out of the teams in the East that are left. There's no way they're beating Golden State. And I hate to say that to that market up there, but that's just, now you're talking a whole nother level of play. I think Houston is the team that if they come out the West, then for some reason they would have beaten Golden State. But I think that they would be a team that could succumb to an Eastern Conference team as far as 1 or 2 games. But if it's Golden State, you're lucky if you get one on them in the finals if you're an Eastern Conference team.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a major mismatch. So we got a lot of NBA left, which is always good. All right, listen, my friend, great stuff as always. Appreciate you jumping on board. Be well. We will chat next week and enjoy the rest of the playoffs. And hopefully, I don't know, I was going to talk a little Nationals baseball with you, but we'll do that in July.
Oh, sure. You're kind of the afterthought here now.
Yeah, exactly. That's why.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, have a good weekend, pal. We'll talk next week.
Man.
All right. Always appreciate it. Lake Lewis, great stuff as always with him.